One of my favorite things in motorsports, past the thrill of competition and the on track action, is all the incredible friendships that are made along the way and the tales that get shared as a result. As we enter season 2 of the Old Historic, it's those friendships that made this episode possible. It started in the 1970s as a young group of men descended upon the Nazareth Speedway seeking that thrill of competition. A young hotshoe trying to make his name in Northeast dirt racing that unknowingly would reach the biggest stage at the end of the decade. Two close friends and regular crew members of episode 4 guest Bill Tanzash, whose efforts, along with a lifelong fan who picked up a camera not knowing it would lead to a Hall of Fame career, helped to preserve and document all of the action from Nazareth for years to come. When I first announced my meeting with this group in March of 2024, so many of you great viewers commented about this group being some of the true Sons of Nazareth, and I couldn't agree anymore. As we begin this second season, let's meet these Sons of Nazareth and hear their stories. Let's head into the Old Historic. Nazareth, Pennsylvania. For over 100 years, it's been my family's home. But stemming past my roots, this quiet little Lehigh Valley town plays host to some of the greatest racers in both the Northeast and even the world. I'm Kyle Morris, lifelong Nazareth resident and avid race fan. Join me on this personal journey as I head into my backyard to discover some of the best untold and most well-known racing stories. From weekly Sunday night battles to a legendary family and even an up-and-coming generation of talent, you never know what you're finding. The Old Historic. Hello, race fans. Welcome into season 2 of The Old Historic. I know it's been almost a year since we've done an episode, but there's still plenty of stories to tell surrounding Nazareth Speedway, and that's what we're going to continue on here in this project. You notice a little bit of a different format here today. Instead of a one-on-one interview, we have an awesome panel here today. That old saying, being a fly on the wall. This is a conversation I would just love to be a fly on the wall for. So today, we're going to be able to document both the career of Mr. Ty Scott as well as some racing memories in general. So let me just introduce our panel today. Starting from my right, we have National Sprint Car Hall of Famer, photographer Jack Cromer. Next, the former crew member of episode 4 guest, Mr. Bill Tanzash, as well as Nazareth Speedway photographer Melvin Settler. To my left here, the gentleman who is known for racing all over the Northeast, as well as multiple starts in the Daytona 500, Mr. Ty Scott. And on the end, multi-time videographer at the Nazareth Speedway with his brother, Bob Snyder. This is Mr. Dale Snyder. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited for what we're going to do today. So, Ty, we'll start with you. If you could just tell us a little bit about your involvement and how you got, first started in racing.
Well, I tell you what, like these guys are sitting on my left and right here. The guys I've known pretty much all my racing career, especially the local career. But like my racing started out very simple. I always wanted to race. My uncle Vic Caesar had a car that they used to take me to the races back in the early '50s to watch him, and it just it grew in me, I guess, as a young boy, and that was like something that I always endured trying. So my father, when I got stationed close to home, when I after high school went into service, and when I got stationed in Connecticut, Groton, Connecticut, my father he said, I'm going to have the guys build a car. And we're sitting in a building that's about 150 feet from the building where they built the car. Uh, and that was my first race car, which is the shop that was closer to the road that we can see from here. But there was a gentleman that worked for us back then, two of them, and were named Jackie. One was named Jackie Kleintop, who was good. Him and Ronnie Ritter were partners in the 666. And Jack Kleintop worked for my father in a high position. He was a good mechanic, good person, and along with Ronnie Ritter. But they kind of led the building of my first car, which was an old 39 Chevy Coupe. And they built that car down in this shop where it was right down the street here. And it was like a car that was a sportsman car, blue number 28. It had Scotty Dalton on it. My father was very proud to be able to have that car built for us. And we started going. We only ran about 6 races at Nazareth Speedway. I don't know if we even went up to Middletown at that time. yet because I ran 6 races. No, I wasn't very competitive, but I started getting a feel of what it was. It was only a small block with an old Lincoln Zephyr transmission in it. It was like those were cars that were pretty much homemade. You know, I mean, straight axle, which they had still had, but and when I was going back and forth into the service, so it was like a little bit of a ride back. So Sunday nights were pretty hectic. So when we left the track, get up in the car and get out the old Route 22 and 46 up 95 to the naval base. But um, I was involved in an accident with an airplane with actually 2 of the guys that I grew up with that became race car drivers and were good friends of mine. Freddie Sabatine, who's passed away, and my other friend Jeff Yasensak, who's like our third brother, my brother would say, and he gone too now. But they were with me. They helped me on a race car at that time. We had gone to high school together. Freddie and I, Jeff and I were friends. He was a year older than me, I think. But they were around all the time. So that Sunday night, they stayed at the house to take me down to the Easton to Braden's Airport to take off with a plane in the morning at 5:30. And the gentleman that was flying this was Eddie Braden. He was the owner of the airport. He sold planes. He was quite a man with the airport and the planes. And he my father had made arrangements for him to fly me back. This was unique because I always drove back, but we were going out to sea that day, the first time in the submarine, and I had to be back to muster by 7:30. So we took off at 5:30, and we never made it past too much past the end of the runway because the guy made a little turn there, and the fog was something that he couldn't adjust to fast enough, and we took some trees down and ended up in the hospital. But those guys were not supposed to be coming with me. And it's ironic, but that's the way it was. Actually, Jeff found when we crashed, it was so foggy that Jeff found this a farmhouse, and he made it to a farmhouse, and he called my parents, and my mother, I think, answered and said, "Well, where are you?" And yeah, and he goes, "Well, we had an accident," and she thought it was a car accident. He said, "No, it's a plane crash." So we ended up, everybody survived. We got busted up pretty good, a lot of us, but thank God it was.
Wow.
That's the first little story of. So my racing career got stopped for a couple of years.
Right. And that was something I was largely unfamiliar with. It was actually just last night that Jack, you had texted me about it and just kind of opened up a whole loophole of that story. But I think one thing we realized, Jack, is just kind of that, I don't want to say bond for trauma, but like experiencing severe accidents. So, Ty had his plane crash. Jack, you almost lost your life in a photography accident. What was that, Flemington?
Yeah, Flemington,
Flemington Speedway.
1978.
And I know, there was a long recovery process with that for you as well. So, yeah, you were saying something for you to relate with Ty about. But while we have you talking with us, how did you get started? It was behind the camera, right?
I was just a race fan at Nazareth.
Mhm.
I started going regularly in 1970. My dad took me to one race in 66, and Rags Carter won that night.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I remember is seeing his Colt #1 coming through the dust, driving through the dust on the turn 4. And my dad let me buy a cavalcade of auto racing magazine, and I still have that book. I used to take it to school all the time, just look at the pictures of the stock cars,
Right.
class. And eventually 70 is when I started going to Nazareth regularly.
Hmm.
And then I brought a camera. I just took pictures from the stands, and then eventually, it was 74. The pits were on the infield, but I saw people sneaking in over the turn, first turn wall, but sheet metal was knocked out from a
Yeah.
storm or something, and people were sneaking in during the heat races and running in the infield. So
Hmm.
I thought, well, I really want to be closer to the action, and that would be my ticket to take pictures.
Yeah.
But it's not right to just go in there because I didn't sign in the pits or anything. So I got my cameras, ran out of the grandstands, walked up Route 191, and there was other people still waiting there to jump over the wall again.
Yeah.
So I hung with them, and I just followed them up over the wall in between the heats, thinking nobody will see us. But then it's
Yeah.
broad daylight, and everybody's looking from the grandstand. It's like,
Right.
oh. So I went in the infield there, and the races started, and I promptly got in the way of Dale's brother Bobby. He was a track photographer. I didn't know him at the time, and other people were in the way. So he had the security first turn guys chase us all back out of the way, and rightfully so. I didn't belong in there,
Yeah.
but that's where I kind of got started, and that led to a good thing because photographer Bob Perrin, who I didn't know at the time either, saw me get chased back, and
Yeah.
so I couldn't take pictures from where I was standing. And he said, like, came up and said, "Kid, if you really want to do this, maybe I can put your name in with Lenny Salmons at Area Auto Racing News and maybe get you a press card." I didn't know Bob, and
Right.
he didn't know me, but he said, "I'll put in a word." And I thought, well, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. I didn't
Yeah.
know. And sure enough, over the winter there, a press card showed up from Area Auto Racing News. And that was the start
That's the
of
start.
1975. It was my first time with the press pass.
And I think the coolest thing is you still haven't put the camera down. Even go back a month or so ago, I had out near Philadelphia to the Motorsports Expo show, the display of the photographers. There's a picture of Donnie Schatz, first place ribbon on the photographer Jack Cromer. And we mentioned it in the introduction as well. The 2021, was it, or 2022 introduction in the Star Hall of Fame?
The National Sports Car
Yeah.
That's 2022.
2022, being able to go in with Tony Stewart and Johnny Gibson, whole legend. But you're still carrying the camera around there this day. We said about doing Williams Grove this weekend, and I know see you at races every once in a while. So it's cool that you still continued photography and that you're really still continuing your passion with it too. It all started with that Kodak, as I know you post about and talk about often. You mentioned about the Snyders, so Dale, we'll throw it over to you. You were involved with your, brother Bob. Obviously, we apologize for his recent passing, but what could you tell us about how both you and your brother got involved and what you guys did involved at Nazareth Speedway?
Well, we only lived 2 minutes away from Billy Tanzash's garage, and we heard the noise, and we went down to see what was going on.
Yeah.
And Bobby went first, of course. I was really young at the time. And we helped Billy along with Mel. We were all good, close family there at that point. And everybody took photos other than helping Billy. We were all photographers at that point.
Mhm.
There was an abundance of still photographers at that point. And I decided to go with the movie route. And that's what started the movies and eventually to videos and the production of all the titles I have at this point. But early gone, my father took us to Langhorne and Trenton to see the big car racing, and along with Billy's garage, that's how I got started.
Yeah. And you guys did, all the Nazareth Speedway track videos together at
Yeah.
Snyder's production. So you mentioned about the noise coming from the shop. One of the guys making that noise in the shop, longtime crew member and friend of Billy Tanzash, Mel Stetler. So Mel, how did you get involved with both Billy and in racing in general?
My uncle took me to the first race. We lived on a farm down in Lower Nazareth. He came down and took me one time
Yeah.
to the races, and I was hooked. I wanted to go ever since. I used to take pictures of him going past the old house on 191 and the cars on open trailers waiting to go in the pit area. And from there, it just took off, If it wouldn't be for Billy building me a first-class dark room, I might not have been doing it.
Right.
But he built me a dandy. And he said it was in one of Frank Tanzash's father's houses my parents bought.
Uh-huh.
And down in the corner of the basement, we built a dark room. He made a list out of what I needed. He said, "You pay for the materials and I'll build it for you." And it had everything. Heat, air conditioning, everything. And that's how I got started. After we moved into Frank Tanzash's house, just below Billy's shop, I heard the race car start up,
Uh-huh.
and I was out the back door. I knew what it was.
Right,
I walked up there, and I was standing outside watching them working on the car, and
Uh-huh.
Billy said, "Come on in." And ever since then, he put me to work the first time I was up there, and was up there ever since.
No, yeah, tying it back into Billy, but Titus also has a tie to you as well. We talked at Billy's services a couple months ago about the Daytona trips. So Ty, you were racing in the Daytona 500, but this group of misfits from Nazareth always came down, and the stories I've heard from both the car rides, the hotels, everything in general. I was just curious for any of you, any of the memories you guys have from those trips to Daytona.
Probably a lot of teams that can't even talk about a lot of the stuff that they did.
Right.
That's probably a good idea. But I got to bring this one thing up about when Mel was talking about Billy and Frank Tanzash.
Yeah.
Ironically, Billy, and I'm glad he brought this up because it brought back a memory that I had. But Frank Tanzash and Billy was actually some of my instrumental of racing as well, because Frank Tanzash and his son Billy owned property across the street from where his shop was, and they saw that was going back when I was 15 years old, so close to I'm 74, so 59 years ago. Anyway, so they had topsoil piles that Frank had to sell, and Billy to sell where they were building the homes. They had extra topsoil, and the gentleman that taught me how to run equipment when I was 13, 14, Reno Dal Seghetti, was like my second father. He had made a deal with Frank Tanzash to buy the topsoil. So they dropped me off. I was 15 years old. I'm across the street from Billy's and Frank's place.
Yeah.
And I'm loading the topsoil for the trucks that are coming down. I mean, these trucks were small, but I think I was loading it with Frank's backhoe. But that's how long I've known the Tanzash family. So Mr. Tanzash, Frank was a great man. Billy he was like, you couldn't find a better person than Billy, and as a competitor, but as a person, So I just wanted to get that in there quick when I thought
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mel, I'll kind of bring it back to you, and in talking about Billy, you were basically, I'd say, his right-hand man and one of his, real longtime crew members. So, what are some of your favorite memories in helping on that number 4 car with Billy?
It was almost 365 a year working
Right.
on that stuff, especially when you had to build your own cars back then. We built many and helped a lot of street stock guys and stuff repair their cars, stuff like that. And I can remember one thing, Billy's dad, I don't know what year it might have been. He came to the races. He watched Billy run one heat race, and he was on his way home. He never went back to see Billy race again.
Never knew that.
He said, he didn't want nothing to do with it.
Oh,
He went back home.
Yeah. Was that just out of fear of Billy getting in an accident? Or?
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, we obviously know racing is a dangerous sport. So, Jack, we're go to you. We got this picture over our shoulder here of the crash. I understand that being Middletown, is it?
The one on the top?
Yeah, that one up there on top.
That's a Syracuse.
At Syracuse. Okay. And I know we were talking earlier. Now, what's the story behind that crash there?
Well, that car was that was, I think, 1978.
It was April 15th.
April 15th. There was a race postponed from the fall, which would have been October the year before. And I had sold pretty much everything we had for car motors and things. So the race got postponed till April,
Right.
the following year due to weather. So we were qualified. So Walter Ballard, I was driving Walter Ballard's number 30 then down south, and we were running all the full circuit. But the only motor we had was a motor from the NASCAR. It was a small block.
Yeah.
So we took that up. A couple of us, Vern Culp, and I don't know, a couple guys came down to the race at Bristol, I think, and they took a motor back up, put it in the car, and we were going to go to Syracuse. Now the week of Syracuse that year, we were qualifying at Wilkesboro, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Half-mile track. we had qualified 10th, which was one of our better qualifying positions to start the race. Petty was 9th. So we left there. Dick May, the guy from STP, him and I flew to Syracuse, New York to run the race on Saturday. And then we were going to come back on Saturday night, and I was going to run the race on Sunday, where the start. So that's what the plan was. Now we flew up there, we got qualified, flew up to Syracuse, ran the race, started the race anyway. And well, we didn't go too far because the track, it was really muddy going in the first turn, and the frost was coming out of the ground. And coming off the second turn where it narrows down, it was dusty, bad. I mean, you couldn't see coming off the second turn, and cars were, it was dangerous. But what happened was this car had a small motor, so I had to stay with it a little more than I wanted to. I was venturing to go, the dust was going to clear.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, this time the dust didn't clear coming off the second turn, and I hit the back of the 666. Ironically, the guy that built my first car, and Wayne Ruderman was driving it. I think Howie Krantz was flipping on the inside. Several cars flipped. But talk about flying, that's the highest I ever was with a race car in my life. Because I remember seeing people, when I took off, I saw people on the roof of the warehouse that they were watching a race from coming off the second turn. And it was like a clear second, I could see them clear.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden the car started it started going into a violent flip.
Right.
And then it ended up like it is right there. But they came to me in the hospital, but I was blind for hours. And then what happened was my brother and the gentleman from STP, Dick May, they came, they brought the rental car that we had in my clothes. And my eyesight came back when I was in the emergency room. So I started washing up. I changed my clothes and we took off. I signed out and said, I got to go.
Right.
So the next day, Dick May got me a room at the Ramada Inn in Charlotte. He drove me to the track the next morning. And the next day, the dashboard caught fire. It was a short, and it was electrical fire, and then we couldn't finish that race either. So.
And Jack, you said the story of that crash. He mentioned Wayne Ruderman. You said it actually ripped the roll cage off of Wayne's car.
Yeah, it's like when I walked up there, I thought, oh no, I saw someone die at a racetrack, or at a racetrack. I mean, I was never at a track when someone was killed, and I thought, oh man, Wayne's gone. But then I saw him standing there. I thought, wow, what a miracle!
Right,
How did
right.
he survive that. I felt so bad for him. But then a week later, 7 days later, I almost died at Flemington. That's when I got hit. So it's just like, man, racing isn't that bad.
That's the thing, yeah. And I mean, racing's tough, but it always has action. And that was one thing I was captivated in our view with Warren Wetzel. Dubbed him the flip master. To get, a guy has a log of every flip he's ever witnessed. It's incredible. But I was curious for my panel of photographers here, Dale, we'll start with you. What are some of the most memorable incidents you've caught on camera or video in your case?
Too many to mention.
Right.
Just the actual racing at Reading was really good in the early days, and Flemington and Nazareth, Middletown, they were all good big block tracks. And it was just exciting to see the racing, the side-by-side racing. That's back when every gas station had a stalker in it. It's not like that anymore. But to capture the action at Flemington and Nazareth with the crashes of flips and just good general racing was my good beat.
Yeah. Mel, how about with you? Any major incidents that you remember capturing or some of your favorite memories?
I've seen a lot of good stuff in racing, and I've seen a lot of bad stuff in racing.
Yeah.
Some of the crashes that I've seen were horrendous, especially at Flemington and stuff. And getting back to Syracuse, I talked to Billy to go up to Syracuse the second year under Glenn Donnelly.
Yeah.
We started 13th out of 2 days of qualifying. I think he started right between Brightville and Paul Bolagosh.
Oh, okay.
And he was holding his own until the 21st lap or something like that, and the crankshaft broke going down the home stretch.
Oh.
And that put Billy out of business for a year or two until he got back to getting another motor and stuff like that, So
Wow. I know. So we've kind of mentioned a lot of different tracks, Flemington, Nazareth, Reading, Ty. I'll start with you. I'll just ask you, what was your favorite track to run at, if you had a favorite?
On dirt?
Dirt, asphalt. I mean, I'd probably be looking more so at dirt, but any track in general.
I'll tell you what, the most favorite track that I had that I liked, I mean, Nazareth was our home track, but Port Royal is like with a sprint car.
Yeah.
The last 2 years that I raced, we were at Port Royal. On Saturday night, we would always, with a sprint car, we'd always start out at Williams Grove on a Friday night because that's where everybody showed up. Then on Saturday nights, there was multiple tracks, open, so that the field kind of split up a little bit. But Port Royal still is to me, is one of the most exciting tracks to race at. Because of the bank, I mean, it just has enough banking and enough straightaways. It's a real driver track. It's not, I don't know. Williams Grove is too. Sealands Grove, they're all great tracks.
Right.
Port Royal is one. I gave up running at Sealands Grove on Saturday nights to go to Port Royal. Now, I won at Sealands Grove, I won at Williams Grove, but I never won at Port Royal. And the competition was always good. I mean, I was racing always against great sprint car drivers, and I felt good because they were great guys, and everybody races clean.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Port Royal is probably one of my favorite tracks.
And Dale, will just continue down the line. I know not so much a driver, but favorite track to shoot at for you?
Flemington, of course, with the action. But standing inside the second turn and then seeing them coming through 1 and 2 was just awesome. Side by side, full bore. It was good racing. That's good racing.
Yeah. Mel, what about you? Was that Flemington for you as well?
Well, Nazareth was about a mile from my house.
Yeah.
So it has to be Nazareth times 2.
Uh-huh.
And I really miss Syracuse, and I really enjoyed Knoxville. And then probably Flemington. Yeah.
Yeah. And Jack, what about you for your favorite track to shoot at?
Didn't really have a favorite, but Nazareth is, near and dear because that's where we grew up and the first track I went to. So.
Yeah. So both of you mentioned Nazareth, and we're just kind of go through everyone. The one question I've asked every interview guest in this series is, when I mention the name Nazareth Speedway, what is that one memory that instantly jumps out of your head? So Jack, let's start with you.
That one night when the race was over at 3 a.m., I thought that was pretty wild. It got fogged out, I think, for a while.
Is that up there on the hill on the big track?
No, that was not the small track.
The small track.
The original big track was my all-time favorite track. The 1966 to 71 version. That was neat. And I only went to a few races there in 70 and 71.
Yeah.
But that, like in 70, before the tri-state thing, I mean, we used to get a lot of cars from everywhere. Yeah, Richie Evans would come down. He's got that asphalt guys would put dirt tires on the race. They used to get great fields of cars, and it was just a unique track.
Yeah.
I remember freezing
that night.
There someday.
Yeah. Plus, they ran at night. They lit. It was cool and light.
That's right.
For a mile track.
I think that was the first track that USAC ran under the lights for champ cars when they came there in 68. And
that was the race, if I'm not mistaken, that was won by Mario Andretti.
He won the...
Al Unser?
Mario won at 69.
Okay, 69 for I know it was one of those years he won.
That was the year my dad took me. That was my second race, 1968, for the champ cars, because Mario was racing. And as a kid and a fan, I was always hoping he would win that race, and it was a big letdown when he got second. But then next year we went and he won. And that was the year he won the 500. So that was really cool to be a kid growing up in Nazareth. That whole weekend was neat because that's the parade. That was the parade for him winning Indy 500. Then the night they raced at the big track and he won the race.
And then that night his daughter Barbie born as well. Yep. Now, what about you? Just that memory that comes into mind instantly when you hear that name, Nazareth Speedway?
I don't know what to say. Probably Billy's first win.
Okay.
And then he won, they had 425s. He won 2 of them and was the overall champion
Yeah.
in points for the 4 races. And it was a Pocono qualifier. And well, we didn't go to Pocono, not sure.
Right.
So that's probably the best things, you know.
Right. Right. And Ty, what about yourself when Nazareth Speedway, that memory that comes out to you?
Well, one of the biggest memories was up on the mile and eighth track when it was dirt. You know, it's still dirt, and it was still a mile and eighth before they cut it down to a mile. And the Jerry Freed was not running it then. It was
Lindy.
Lindy Beccari. Lindy Beccari was the promoter that day. They had sprint cars. They had sprint cars and modified that day.
Oh,
And we had both there that day. But the thing was that I remember was Lindy Beccari said to us with the sprint cars that he wanted us to start 3 abreast. Now, everybody's looking at each other and they're saying, boy, this ain't going to work.
Yeah.
So anyway, everybody's going to give a position. They're going to, we're going to be real nice going to the first turn. And then, then you can start racing. Well, I don't think anybody got past the first
Never
turn.
made it.
Yeah.
And there was more cars flipping and crashing. I got some pictures of that. But I remember going over and getting Brian Seidel out of his car because it was on fire. But that was one of the craziest races that I was ever involved in at Nazareth. But it was on the mile and eighth track. But
Yeah. That's a big one. I know the pictures you mentioned, just seeing the free wide start and the accident that ensued from it. We'll be putting some of those pictures on screen.
Because it had a neat. The track was great. I mean, but the funneling down into going into first turn was the factor that nobody was going to be a gentleman and let somebody else have them. So everybody's crowding in there. You can't. The race car drivers, when they put their helmets on, you don't. I mean, your adrenaline's going. I mean, by the time they throw that green, you're so wound up that you don't care. Nobody cares, and you don't feel anything.
Right.
Really, I mean, it's like you're numb. So. What's his name? Ronnie Engel. He used to be a pace car driver sometime, and he had an El Camino or something like that.
Yeah.
He'd been out on half-mile track, and he used to tell me. Ronnie would say, "Ty," he said, sometimes when they had to throw a red flag, when I looked at the faces of you guys, everyone, not just me, but the drivers, he goes, it looked like they were from outer space.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a look on their face that you don't want to cross,
Yeah.
and that's probably because of the adrenaline,
Absolutely.
So that's a couple of other things, but
yeah. And Dale or Koza, with you, that one memory when you hear Nazareth Speedway mentioned.
Well, it was a mile away from our house. Grew up there. It was a great place to start racing, and a lot of good memories. But we interviewed Kevin Collins for our video years ago, and he summed it up. Never forget his interview. And he said, everybody had a bad thing to say about Nazareth that day at the end. Jerry Freed this, Jerry Freed that. The track condition was horrible. Car counts were down. They closed. Now, once it's closed, everybody's missing the track. We had great times. It was right down the street from us, and it's gone now. So take it from there.
Right.
It's quite an interesting concept there.
For sure. One thing I wanted to circle back to when we heard the mention of Tri-State. I know that obviously stems past Nazareth, but Ty, if I'm not mistaken, you competed in the Tri-State challenge.
We competed in the Tri-State in a lot of ways. Actually, my father, Emilio Scott, my father only went to ninth grade. At one time, in his business career, he had 2,100 people working for him. So but he was great with people. He could talk to anybody. I don't care, and he was firm in his beliefs, but we became friends with so many people that were members of Tri-State. These guys got together. I was just starting racing. I didn't really know anybody too much then, but I was just learning these guys.
Yeah.
So what happened? Tri-State formed to create a general car design that you could take from one track to another.
Mhm.
So, because a few tracks like Flemington and like Reading especially, they had a different setback.
Mhm.
They had different things, different engine roll. I don't remember exactly at this point, but mainly it was a setback, I think. And actually, Glenn Donnelly ended up doing it. Tri-State was a model
Mhm.
for what became Glenn Donnelly's offshoot of dirt, because he created the same rule book. He made a rule book that's what you want to race, that's what you do.
Right.
That's where we get the money, and it's all about the money. So Tri-State was formed with a group of guys: Bud Olson, Leon Manchester. They were a couple. I can't. Bobby
Motor.
Pickle.
Pop photo 13. The owner of the 13, he was in it.
Well, yeah, there was a nucleus of guys that were car owners
Mhm.
and drivers, and they believed in this, and they'd get more, they'd get a few more here and a few more there, and actually they had to go and rent a track of Tri-State was at Harmony Speedway for a track that was never utilized for years.
Yeah.
Talk about Nazareth. This was a track that was utilized, and they got a lot of the drivers, owners, fans, went over there and competed. But we had to compete against. I remember going down to Flemington, they wouldn't let you in. It was like a strike.
Hmm.
They wouldn't let you run. You got Middletown. So the promoters at that time, they were the guys that these guys, have a different relationship with them. I had a different relationship with them also.
Yeah.
And so did my father. And my father supported these guys to the point where he was paying the whatever they didn't have in the grandstands to make up the purse. My father was paying at that time.
Oh, wow.
That's how he liked these guys.
Mhm.
So I mean, when they talk about Tri-State, now that's something I don't mince any words about. Those were good people.
Right.
They had a good idea. They wanted to race. Now, some of the tracks, they had their own agenda that they were looking for
Mhm.
themselves. But so that's what happened. And Tri-State was something. That's probably why I never really raced at Flemington,
Mhm.
because I remember going over there. They wouldn't let us race anyway, but we went there, and that was during the time when I was just starting.
Yeah.
And the guys that my father was supporting and felt very close to and had a lot of respect for. And one of them was Mr. Cozy, too, Dick Cozy,
Yeah.
at that time. So, and Billy, I think Billy stayed with us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because my
Yep.
father always had a great relationship with Billy.
Mhm.
Leroy was there.
Yeah, there was
Leroy.
Amy. For a while, we had Will Cagle, then he got bought off, I think. But because the guys back then, they would get the good guys, the promoters would pay those guys $100, $200 show money. They call it show money
Yeah.
for them to come. So they were buying them.
Mhm.
It's the same way, I'm sure, and it's a real world.
Mhm.
It's not the ideal world. It's the real world. This is what happens out in the street. If they want somebody to show up, they pay them.
Right.
Because they draw fans, and the fans fill the stands, and the fans pay the purse. So I don't know. That's Tri-State was something I was glad to be a part of, and I'm sorry that it wasn't as more successful
Right.
as it wasn't as successful as Glenn Donnelly. Glenn Donnelly was a businessman that concentrated. That's what his business was.
Mhm.
These other guys were. This was fun, part time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they didn't have the time or the effort to take it like Glenn did. But Glenn did a good job with it. So
Well, Mel, I wanted to throw it to you. And Ty mentioned about Billy being involved on Tri-State, and I know in my episode with him, and as well as in talking to you off camera, what were some of your memories just being involved in that Tri-State scene, both helping on Billy's car and just kind of spectating it at large?
I know, like what Ty said about engine setback.
Mhm.
That's from the center of the kingpin to the face of the block. We just finished up a brand new sedan, and the motor was back too far.
Oh.
What are we going to do? Cut a brand new car apart? So we went to Reading,
Mhm.
and it had a Pontiac motor in it,
oh no.
and it was nothing but trouble.
Mhm.
And from there, I can't remember too much. I know we went to Harmony every week. I know Billy used to go over there and help get the track in shape, stuff like that. I can still see Whit Mulligan on the back of the water
Yeah,
truck.
Whit Mulligan was a big
Yeah.
guy. I
was-
should have mentioned his name too. Yeah. Well, I remember when we were working on the track to get it ready because it hadn't been raced on in years.
Yeah.
And we were over there. My brother was over there with us one time. We got a fire going because we were trying to get it ready for opening day. And there was cornfields there. But we had pushed all this stuff on a pile and got it lit up. But then the fire spread. And a bunch of us, we had one hell of a time getting that out, And
Yeah.
then we were had to put not all new boards, but the track was a wooden fence, like Flemington, I guess. But and the state of New Jersey regulated racing the safety of the track, of the walls and the fences back then. Not Pennsylvania, I don't think they had any regulation. It was like whatever they thought. But in Jersey, we had to comply. So I remember we were over there nights working and putting these fence up, and then it was a real challenge for a lot of ways besides just driving a race car.
Mm-hmm.
And at one time, they would run 2 nights there because they didn't want the guys obviously wanted to race.
Yeah.
So if they couldn't race somewhere else, they had to race there. So that was another trial period that was like, okay, that was another test for Tri-State.
Yeah.
But it was a nice time of our life,
Jack, Dale, for both of you, I don't know if you have any memories of Tri-State being recording any of the races or taking pictures.
I went to Harmony one time.
Mhm.
My aunt took me there, and it was pretty cool. It was really neat. And it was camera and autograph day, so I brought my little camera. I think I took like 9 pictures. That was it.
Yeah.
But it was just, I still have those pictures, and it was a real fond memory.
Harmony was like a D shape. It had a dog leg in the back.
Yeah.
And
That's where the grandstand should have been.
and,
and backstretch.
and if you
Yeah.
until you learned how to run that, it was different. It wasn't
Right.
like a
Conventional.
paper clip. It was
Yeah, I was there every week with Billy, sometimes 2 nights a week, Friday and Sunday nights, I think they ran. But going up River Road with the trailer and the truck, and the road was narrow, and it was a hassle getting up there. But the racing was good. I enjoyed the racing there.
Yeah.
Ty, do you remember the night all the Tri-Staters got together and went to Nazareth? We were outside the pit entrance, and Jerry wouldn't let us in.
Wouldn't let us in. Yeah.
So we all, what did we do? All turn around and left?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I remember I was just a fan. I got hooked on racing in 1970 there. And then
Yes, that was right around when it was going.
71 is when the strike happened in Tri-State. And I went to the first race at Nazareth, and there were hardly any star drivers there. And as a kid, I was bummed. I was like, oh, there's hardly any cars here. Where'd they all go? I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, because most of it, go ahead.
And eventually, some started coming back. But I used to ride my bike down to the big track because I was wondering, when are all these cars coming back? And I heard a rumor like some of the guys from Tri-State were coming back to the track. So I rode my bike as a kid down to the big track. I went to the short chute there, and all I saw was the roof of Del George going by.
Okay.
And I was Del George fan.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're back.
Yeah.
Like, there's Del. He was a Tri-State guy. So I was
Tri-State.
all
Yep.
excited.
Del was a
I
great.
rode my bike home as fast as I could. I had my dad drop me off. He would drive me down to the races and pick me up after the races. And it was back then, you had to go to the phone booth and put the money in. And you don't want to spend the money, so you call home and let it ring once and then hang up. And
That was a code.
That was his code.
Yeah.
That was a
Come
code.
pick me up after a race.
Yeah.
So
That's why there's no more phone booths.
Yeah.
You ran them broke.
But that was so exciting as a kid. Like, I thought, oh, they're all back, but they weren't. It was just a couple of guys trickled back in for that one of the big races at Nazareth National. But I think Del might have won that night. I'm sure.
We may have.
But it was 71. I remember Tri-State was in full swing, and a bunch of us tried to sneak in the big track, because we were Tri-State guys, went to see the races, and this is up behind Jerry's office. There was a little gate there between the dog leg and the rooster tail.
Yeah.
It must have been 8 of us. Mel, you were there too. Jackie weren't around yet.
No, I was riding my bike. That's
You
the
were riding your
spot where I
bike,
rode my
and,
bike to, right there
Yeah.
in that
so we're all standing. There was a little between the corrugated sheen and the rail that supported the gate. There was an opening, maybe this wide, and there was, like I said, 6 or 8 of us, and we were going to sneak in. Well, the heat race was coming down. The tunnel turn, getting ready to take the green flag. So everybody's looking that way, so we could sneak and run across the track as you were coming out and get the green flag. Everybody jumped on the wall and ran across. My brother was in front of me. He's a little bigger than me. He got stuck.
Oh,
He got stuck. So he wrenched his way and finally got over. And I was the last one. And I was on top of the wall as we were coming through the dogleg. I made it. But we all made it. Had a good night. The race is inside for free.
Hey.
Sorry, Jerry.
Yeah.
I got to bring up something that goes back to around '68 when you guys were talking about this before Tri-State, but we're getting off that subject for a minute. This in 1968, I couldn't race because I was in a plane crash. So then a gentleman, I think Wilberforce, drove my car in the it was a race, sportsman race there that I don't know if it was a special race or not, but what happened was that's when, if you look at the pictures, '68, until that time, you didn't have to have a fire suit. In fact, I don't think anybody had a fire suit.
Right.
We'd wear t-shirts,
T-shirt.
jeans, had a open face with a mask with a neckerchief across your face to keep the dust out of your nose
Yeah.
and your mouth, and goggles. But that was it. Maybe a pair of gloves. But that year, I was sitting in a grandstand on the fourth turn, and there was a wreck. And that's the race that the gentleman from Summit Hill got burnt.
Bobby Wargo.
Bobby Wargo. Unfortunately, the regulations on tanks back then were anything, whatever, beer kegs, steel tanks, anything you wanted. The bumpers were not regulated.
Right.
Some were made to push more so than they were to deflect cars or whatever. But I think it was Engler's car hit the back of Bobby Wargo's and ruptured his fuel tank and caused a fire that was like, and Bobby got burnt bad. I mean, that was the scariest sight that I was ever at Nazareth, and I was a spectator, and I felt so bad. And I know Bobby, still, but I hope he's doing it right now. But that was what started. Talk about something to talk about. That's what started fire suits and fuel cells. Two things came out of that were the best. Unfortunately, Bobby had to be the brunt of the reason.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that was something I was, looking to talk about was the evolution of safety, because especially, you guys were all involved in a pivotal time, in motorsports in general, where we transitioned, like Ty said, to the fire suit, to the fuel cell. So I know, Ty just said about the fuel cell and the fire suit. Mel, in building all the cars for Bill Tanza, do you remember any, major safety evolutions that you guys added into the cars over the years?
The only thing Billy wanted to do, he was always worried about a car coming in through the window. So we added that extra bar alongside of them.
Yeah.
And since then, I've seen a couple of cars have that, over the years. And other than that, he always wanted the best, back then, fiberglass seat, which was no good.
Yeah.
The seats today are amazing. And always bought brand new belts and stuff like that, and had a good helmet.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So,
And
A lot of magnafluxing, spindle.
that's what I was going to ask, Dale. I know you were involved with Bill as well. Was there anything that you remembered in particular?
No, just what Mel said. Bill was very up on that,
Right.
up on the safety.
Getting back to Harmony, who built Harmony?
Harmony Speedway was a track that Carl Van Horn, I think. I think Carl Van Horn was related, or he did it himself years ago. This before Tri-State was even thought about. That it was a closed track from back then. They had a beautiful concrete grandstand there. But then they had a drag strip in front of it. So the fans were like, the fans that were sitting in the grandstands, then there was the drag strip was right in front of them.
Okay.
Then the racetrack was further inside. So you didn't probably get the full effect of the race.
Right. Right.
Your hot dogs didn't get as much dust on them.
Yeah.
We were cleaning out Billy's garage, and behind my toolbox, I found an old Harmony poster. And on the bottom, it said promoter Dick Krause.
Okay.
Remember that name?
Yep.
Was he the very first
Well,
one?
the Krause was a big family. They may have owned the property because the Krauses, I think they're still property owners in Harmony around that could have been them.
Yeah.
But,
What year would that have been?
well, I don't know when they had it, but it was probably in the late
Late
50s,
60s?
late 50s,
Maybe in the
early
late
60s, maybe when it had to be running a few years before.
Yeah.
Was it
That I'm not
was it
accurate
built
on.
in 63 or something like that? I
Maybe.
don't know. I don't remember.
You know, there's one thing we're talking about safety, then we're going to talk about something else. 1 second, you mind?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. There was a series of 100-lap races that we would go from one track to the other track.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were all Schaefer races, but the first race that year was going to be at Lebanon Valley. And but they never really would talk about weight limits for this, talk about rules. Yeah. I was understanding that there was no weight limit for this car, for this race.
Yeah.
These 100-lappers. So we had a car built over the winter, and that was probably 1975, probably before I went into NASCAR. I even thought about it. But we had a frame built that up in New York State. Walt Schwinning he would build these frames. And John Burnett, the guy who was doing my engines back then, he knew Walt Schwinning. So we went up there in a van and picked this frame up. This frame, the 2x4 frame was made out of 90 thousandths wall as opposed to 120 thousandths wall. The roll cage was built some of it was built out of 90 thousandths, which it should have been 120 thousandths, and some of it was 83 thousandths wall. And I mean, that thing was light.
Yeah.
So we put this car together. We go up to Lebanon Valley. They say, you got to weigh the cars. I said, oh, no. We had to be, I think for a small block back then, I think it was 2,650 pounds, maybe. Somewhere around that number registered, but we were around 2,000 pounds.
Wow.
I mean, we had shaved the bolts, heads, drilled the bolts. I mean, back then they didn't have nobody was wearing titanium. We figured any way you could save the front end was lighter, everything. I mean, the car was, it was dangerous. But anyway, I didn't realize how dangerous it was. But anyway, then we ran that. We had to go there. The guy had a logging chain on the back. We had lead bolted to the floor. We made weight. And the promoter goes, that weight better be on the car when you finish the race. I think we finished third or fourth.
Yeah.
But later on, then we sold the car. I sold the car to somebody that was running East Windsor. They didn't have a weight limit over there. He took a mild flip with that car. And when he flipped it, the thing was flat. He broke his back. I said, you're supposed to, because when I sold it to him, I told him what the steel. I said, this thing is made to run on its wheels, not its roof.
Right.
I said, so make sure you know that,
Right.
And it didn't work. So that was one episode that
I was gonna say.
I'm glad I wasn't in it, but I felt bad. I forget what his last name was, but he ran in East Windsor, and that's where he flipped it. That was the end of the car. Called me from the hospital.
Wow.
How many different tires do you think you went through at Nazareth? Different kinds.
Oh no, whatever. We tried.
I can remember the Jalonis,
Oh yeah, we had drag
tires.
Yeah.
Remember the old Firestone TD tires? They were asphalt tires. Had real tiny little tread.
Yeah, yeah. And then they had they had the Race Masters.
Yeah.
Goodyears. I mean, the Goodyear's Race Master. I think they had.
Tall City recaps. Yep. Oh, I hated them. The sidewalls were so stiff.
I think I was out of there when they went to the recaps. I think
Yeah,
I really only ran Nazareth from maybe 71 or 72 to 76. And 76, we didn't run all the races because I started racing NASCAR
Mhm.
a little bit.
That's something we're gonna get into too. You know, in this dinner episode, your NASCAR careers. You know, a lot of great stories there that I'd love to be able to document. But just in looking at what we've already documented here with Nazareth, Flemington, Reading, Harmony, Tri-State in
Oh, yeah.
general, we're kind of wrap this episode up here, and then we're continuing
that's
in
fine.
another episode into Ty's NASCAR career. But we're just kind of go around the table once, just any closing remarks or memories that we want to document as part of this series. So Dale, I'll start it off with you.
A lot of good memories. A lot of good memories and good times. That's all.
I tell you what, we had some of the best years, I think, of racing that there are. There was a lot of cars, a lot of people, a lot of fans, the grandstands. I mean, from the pits to the grandstands, the car count was up. When we were racing, there was a lot more cars. You had to make the field. Today, they're all suffering the same thing: car count.
Right.
And fans. We had the best. We had car count. We had competition. We had the widest field of qualified cars and drivers that I think there ever was. And today, I don't see that.
Right. Yeah,
So it's a cost. I mean, a lot of it's a cost, but and it's a cost for fans. And everybody wanted to make it so you could afford to take a car to track and make something. But now if they don't have a sponsor, you're not going to make anything. And then so when people go to the stands, they can afford to take their family and enjoy a night, out with their family and their kids, have a hot dog and afford it. But I don't know. It's changed a lot, since we were there.
That's how
And I wish the best for it because I think there's not a better sport than racing.
Absolutely.
I'm still hooked on that.
Yeah. I don't think anybody here will fight you on that, and I'm sure any of our audience at home too. Mel, how about you? Any closing remarks for us?
I helped Billy between 66 and 85. And that was the good time.
Yeah.
As far as racing. The racing today, I don't know. So expensive. I don't know how guys do it.
Right. Absolutely.
But it was fun. If I had to do it over, I'd probably make a little bit of changes here and there. But it was good time.
Sure thing. And Jack, you still have a unique perspective on it. Obviously, being involved in what we consider the older times, that now still being involved in the modern era. So, how about from you?
Yeah, the racing back in say 1970, the cars were unique. The drivers all had characters back in the day, and it was entertaining. It was fun. It's a great night. The racing is so different now.
Right.
Well, I used to take a roll of 36 exposures at a race. And it seems so ancient. I had to go home and develop it after. And now you can shoot 1,000 or 2,000 pictures at a race, and you get better shots because you can just blast away instead of taking one shot of something. You can take multiple ones and pick out the best one. So it's so much easier today. We had to be in the dark room back then. Now I'm developing my pictures today in the living room with the lights on.
Right.
TV with my family.
Yeah.
Before you had to lock yourself in a dark room for hours and just to make a few prints.
Yeah.
So it's so much easier.
It's definitely interesting, like looking back at all these stories in today's light and just hearing how truly different it is. And, I know we're going to be doing, like I said, the episode after this, talking about Ty's NASCAR career, having a primary NASCAR audience on this channel. I'm really excited just to talk about, tie your experience, gentlemen, any of your memories with it as well. Kind of like what we did here with the dirt side, but now continuing into what was, the heydays of NASCAR as we know it today. But that's where we're calling it for this episode number 6. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. It's been a true pleasure to do this episode today with all of you. For more great motorsports content, everyone, stay tuned down below. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. More motorsports content coming all season long. This is only the beginning. We're back on this trail in the old historic, trying to tell as many stories as we can for the Nazareth Speedway. If you'd like to support this series, down in the description below, there's a link for merchandise. All of the profit that I make from that goes right into recording equipment and all of the expenses to help offset the cost of doing this production. But that'll be it for episode number 6, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Kyle Morris on behalf of Come On YouTube and the Old Historic, saying thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time in the Old Historic.